Shri Gurubhyo Namah. A very warm welcome to yet another session of Quest. And before we begin, let me start with a small prayer. Om Sada Shiva Samarambha Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Padyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guru Ratmeti Murti Veda Vibhagine Vyomavatyaptadehaya Shri Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om. Today we have a very special guest joining from Pune, Dr. Aravind Raghavan ji. Thank you for agreeing for this interview, Dr. Aravind ji, and we are very glad to have you here today. Yes, just a brief introduction before we begin the interview series. Dr. Aravind Raghavan secured a gold medal during his graduation and a silver medal later in post-graduation. And he has completed his PhD in computational fluid dynamics from IIT Bombay and is currently working as a scientist for Corning. This was as far as his Vyavaharika responsibilities are concerned. But he has also been a member of Chinmaya family for a long time and a spiritual sadhaka. And he has served as the secretary of Chinmaya Yuva Kendra in Mumbai for more than 5 years. And afterwards, he has taken many other responsibilities for Chinmaya Mission. One unique thing about him is that he loves interacting with youth and is very active on social media, especially on topics related to Vedanta, Dharma, Shastras, philosophy, and so many other things. And he has also acted in several plays of Cinema Yuva Kendra and played a major part in scripting and directing the play, just like that, contemporary take on Bhagavad Gita. He has also taken several workshops for a wide range of audience, right from primary school children to corporates. And he considers it's his life mission that to bring back respect and understanding among the current generation for the infinite wisdom contained in our Shastric heritage. This is a very, very big vision, Arvindji. Very warm welcome to on our show.
First of all, thank you so much, Nitinji, for inviting me here to be a part of this wonderful movement. And I have been a big fan of your work. So I have your books. I keep reading them, and I also keep following your wonderful posts on social media as well. So and the way you've been the dharmic perspective to so many contemporary issues is something that I really enjoy reading. So thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here today.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful. So let me begin with the opening question. This is the question I ask all our guests. How did it all begin? How did your tell us about your life journey and your introduction to spirituality in general, but more specifically to Vedanta? Was it a family influence? Was it you met somebody? How did it all happen? Tell us about your spiritual journey.
Right. So I think I have been really blessed that in my life at different points of time, the knowledge has come to me rather than me going towards knowledge. So that is definitely the grace of Bhagwan and grace of the Gurus that has happened. So actually, my family is a religious family. So we always had, like we do a puja part every day. Those are like fixed. Every day you have to do your prayers. The day will begin with Suprabhatam and all of that. So those sort of things were there, like in many typical South Indian families, the way it happens. So that way we were always, connection with God and rituals, those things were there, but not really exposure to Vedanta as such. So my grandfather, this is my mother's father, he was very philosophical and spiritual. Although I was not very, I was quite young at that time when he passed on, but my family used to often say, many things that, oh my, grandfather was very philosophical, and there's a lot of respect that they had for my grandfather because of that. He used to quote the Bhagavad Gita, and sometimes he used to say some things like that you should neither do good nor do bad. And so I used to things like that. I used to wonder what does it mean, not doing good, not doing bad. So that he was one person. Though I never discussed philosophy with him, I was quite small, but then I heard a lot of stories and things like that from him. After that, the second influence happened that, and when I was small, I used to participate in this speech competitions that Ramakrishna Mission used to conduct every year. So they would have this elocution competition. So they would give these speeches of Swami Vivekananda, and so you have to kind of, there would be one, and then you would make a small excerpt of it, and then you have to go and speak about it. So almost, I think, for 6 years continuously, I participated every year. And so generally as prizes, they would give away books of Swami Vivekananda. If you won something. So I won a few times. So they had, so I had got these books. So that was the second thing. So I read some of them, and some of them, of course, were very inspiring, and some of them didn't make sense to me. But then it was again a little bit of a introduction that's happened there. Then my sister, elder sister actually, so she started reading the Bhagavad Gita at some point of her life, and she was very influenced by it. So she would often talk about the Gita and things like that. So that's how slowly I got like bit by bit introduction from my grandfather, then Ramakrishna Mission, and then my sister, and eventually my sisters actually and my mother they so I. So Chinmaya Mission used to do Gita chanting competition where I also participated like once in a while, but again it was only limited to the chanting aspect. So there was not much of philosophy there yet. But what happened was there was one event that Chinmay Yoga Kendra was doing in this is 2000 something around that time. So my sister had participated in that quiz on the Bhagavad Gita, and she had like qualified up to national level and all that. So that time I got more exposure to Chinmay Mission. So there is something like this, some organization like this. And coincidentally, a few years around that time, Astha TV started. So I don't know if you remember that. I think still there. So Astha channel.
Yeah,
And there,
yeah.
so there I used to listen to all these, like many different speakers were available. And that time that was like the only, there was no YouTube or anything else. So whatever came on Astha would be. So there I heard Swami Chinmayananji's talks on Viveka Chudamani. So it used to be like every night, I think 1 hour program or something like that. And that was when I was really taken in. Because I think his characteristic style of speaking, his wit and his rational approach to things. So I was somebody who was always, who wanted to ask a lot of questions and try to understand the intellect. So although I now understand a lot of limitations to that as well, but at that moment, that was the only way I could have been convinced of anything. So I was very driven by that, and that's where I got my connect with Chinmaya Mission and with Vedant specifically. And since then, of course, as I know my family, as we got more and more involved in Chinmaya Mission, so my sister did this e-Vedanta course, there is online Vedanta course which Chinmaya Mission does, and then we started taking study classes and things like that. And slowly, I got more and more introduced. So that's why, as I said, I have not made any efforts at the beginning to get this knowledge. It just kept coming to me at different points in life, and that's how it happened.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, tell us about your. I believe you have formally studied Vedanta in Chinmaya Mission. So, tell us about your teachers in Vedanta and how you went about studying and how they have influenced you in life. Perhaps you can share one or two interesting anecdotes as well from your interaction with your gurus for many years.
Right. I think so. As I said, I started studying like formally Vedanta actually when once I joined the study groups of Chinmaya Mission. That's what there is a basic text which they begin with. So there are two types. The one is of course I have studied Tattva Bodh and Atma Bodh, those sort of texts which are like the technical Prakarana Granthas of that. But before that, again, Swami Chinmayanji himself has written some beginning books. There's something called as Kindle Life, and there's something called a Manual of Self Unfoldment, which are like the beginning books which use the same concepts of the Vedanta, but they introduce them in a simple manner so that any average person can start. So that's how I got introduced to Vedanta little by little, and I was really, captivated by the whole approach to things, approach to life, and it was like every class would be like a small kick for the intellect. Oh my God, this is something that I have not thought about, or this perspective of something is not that I've gained. So that was one thing which really piqued my interest in Vedanta, and that's how slowly I wanted to learn more and more. And then I started reading a lot. I used to also read here and there. I used to read something from Vivekananji, something from other people as well. But predominantly, it was driven by my exposure to the Chinmaya Mission. So with all the texts that they did, and so this was one aspect, which was the knowledge aspect, where it was very specific. I was very captivated by that knowledge. Then also there were some moments in our life also where some things happened. There were some some little bit of turbulent times in life, as it happens with everyone. So in those times, I felt that that if I didn't have this knowledge backing me, then I would have responded much more poorly to those situations than what I actually did. So that's when I realized that this knowledge is not, of course, it has a great, it is not meant only for getting over your problems. That's a very like a small side effect of that knowledge, of getting over some current problems. But it really gives you a great strength to be able to move on in life. I think that is something that I really gained from Vedant. And that is something that has helped me a lot in various things of my life. So I think so one is that when I started joining Chinya Mission, I actually joined the elders group, the elder study groups and all of that. So I was not really part of the youth wing for a long time. I was so initially I got exposed to the elder group, and through that I was trying to, as I said, my only task was I was like hungry for Shastra at that time. So I just wanted to read more and more books. I sometimes bought too many books also, and then I realized that maybe I should have slowed it down a bit. I was just trying to read more and more. But I think but that it helped in some ways because it gave me a lot of understanding, and I had a lot of questions. And whenever I would approach any acharya in Chinmaya Mission, they would all be happy to answer questions. I have never been heckled or told, "Hey, don't ask this." Nothing of that sort. It's always been that yes, go on, ask more. So I'll be happy to answer. I think that is something which has helped me specifically. And yes, and I found that it is of great practical relevance also. People often think so, that Vedant, but there's a phrase they say that if you talk something very say, up in the air, they will say Vedant mat bolo. That kind of phrase is often sometimes used colloquially. But I feel that's very wrong because Vedant is more grounded than many things. And it keeps you on the ground as well. So,
I think many of us, I think you have been lucky in some sense, truly, because many of us started with asking questions, but not all of us have found people who are willing to actually answer them or who knew to answer them. So for many of us, especially for example, me, for a long time, it was a solo journey, of discovery and reading and going through the bylanes and everything. So it's interesting. You were with Chinmaya Yuva Kendra for 5 years as a secretary and handled all its activities. So can you please share about your activities with the Chinmaya Yuva Kendra, as well as afterwards you held different responsibilities with Chinmaya Mission. So can you share more about the kind of activities you undertook at that time?
sure. So first of all, I'll tell you the way I got into Chinmaya Yoga. As I said, I had joined mission quite some time ago, but as I said, I was only more interested in gaining the Shastra bit and getting more notes. I was part of the study groups and I would attend all the satsangs, and that was that was it. So there was nothing. So there was not much of seva. It was only mainly satsang and swadhyay. That was my only that was the way I was connected with the mission. And often, actually, at that time, I was once asked, one of the Swamis of Chinmaya Mission, hey, why don't you come and join the youth groups? But for some reason, I had this air of intellectual superiority, perhaps. But I thought, hey, this and all, this youth wing and all those activities, these are very, just more of a time pass thing. And for people who are beginners in this field, for they are really not meant for people who are very advanced thinkers. So that was the arrogance that I had at that time. So I didn't give that much importance. But when I joined in IIT when I was doing my MTech, so so at that time I was so there was a study class, youth class, which was starting in Powai. So Powai is a ashram of Chinmaya Mission, which is close to IIT. So one of my friends, I was trying to get him to introduce to Vedant, and also I said, okay, this is study class starting. It's on Sundays. It's not very far from IIT. Why don't you go? He said, I will go only if you come. Because he was like, I don't know anyone there. So if you are there, then I will come. So I said, okay, I will come for you. So I thought I already studied all this, but okay, my friend ke liye chala jaunga. So with that kind of thing, I went and I joined that group. And then they were doing a play at that time. So this was so, and then they said that there's a small role, there's not much. I said, no, play and all, I can't do right now. But they said, no, it's a very small role. It doesn't even have dialogues, just thoda sa, but 5-10 minutes, why don't you give it a shot? So I said, okay, and let me try. So that was my first activity as such in Chinmaya Yoga Kendra. And what I realized then was that, there's only so much that theory can get you. And unless you don't find an expression to do seva, it really, your ego doesn't really get that right treatment that it requires. So it was at then that as I got actually experience, and then I realized that this what I was thinking is just some time pass. It actually has a very great it has a very great impact on me and spiritual growth also. So I then really started to enjoy it more and more. And so it's, as I said, one thing that I did was we started plays. That was my initial journey in Chinmay Yoga Kendra. So I participated in a few plays. So the theme also of the plays were like the one was on India, so there was patriotic theme, and one was on Saraswati civilization. So that I did part of that play. And then there was also so those kind of plays where and the themes were also such that I got a lot of exposure to many of the content. And because I was getting more involved, then we started doing these youth camps. So we have this overnight camps, like a 2-day camp, 3-day camps. So I started initially I was only volunteering to do that. Then I started conducting them. And then it was really I understood what it means to do seva, what it means to be in the field. And the next set of thing happened when in 2015, we were completing 15-16 was the 100th centenary year of Swami Chinmayananda. So he was born in 1916. 2016 also. For that, Chinmaya had launched a movement called Transforming Indians to Transform India. So in this, what we were doing is there was initially like a national level quiz, and then the finals happened. In that, even Dr. Abdul Kalam came in the finals, and that was the one part of it. So there was a book which we had brought out, and there was a quiz done on that based on various aspects of transformation. Then they wanted to do this in schools, colleges, and everywhere else, and corporate. So we wanted to do workshops for it, free of cost, but we wanted to reach out to everybody. So there in Mumbai, we had got a target of completing 1,008 workshops in one
Oh,
year. So we have to do 1008 workshops was the vision given to us. So that was one thing where I and my family really, I never knew that I would be able to do it, but it used to be like hectic sometimes. And I would take a session and rush back to IIT for PhD work. And sometimes all weekends I would go take one session, then go to another college and do one more session. But the amount of transformation it brought, I don't know if it transformed anybody else, but it transformed me. So as the name was, as the name suggests. So that was a major thing that we did. And I think we crossed 1008. We went past say 1600, 1700 workshops by the end of it. But so those sort of things were the things that I did in Chinmay Yoga. And in between, I took up the responsibility of the secretaryship over there. And it used to keep me very occupied all day, all night, but it was not tiring. It was refreshing. So, and it was during that time that we conceptualized this new play called Just Like That, which we wanted to do on the Bhagavad Gita. And that was a very new experience of how to completely, because just acting in a play when everything is given to you is a different thing. And when it has to be done right from scratch, it's an entirely different thing. So that was also a very great experience. And because I was involved in the scripting, I also had to understand the Gita in a great way. Because I cannot just like that write something without understanding about it. So that's when I used to sit with Swamiji and and discuss with him. Swamiji, this is how Karma Yoga, how are we going to depict? And he would say, this is the essence of Karma Yoga. Can you bring it? How do you bring the dialogue? And what is Bhakti Yoga? So that really gave me a very much greater understanding. So whatever I gained from Tattva Bodh and all of that was one level of understanding. But this sort of things gave me a second level of understanding.
very fascinating account, Arvindji. Let me ask you a question. Since you have studied, I think it's both post graduation, PhD in IIT Bombay. So, having studied it there, how do you think the educated youth in such institutes perceive Sanatana Dharma in general and Vedanta in particular?
So the thing is, so as I said, when I was doing my MTech, initially I used to be quite reticent about my philosophies. I would not really go and talk to many people outside about what I do in Chinmaya Mission. So it was more like to me myself kind of a thing. But then eventually I felt that no, I should kind of reach out to more people, and because this is something which is very great use. So I started to talk to more people, and this was during my MTech and still during my PhD days. So that's when I really started to reach out to more. And what I found is that there are, there are some elements who are very skeptical and who think all this is, who have made up their minds basically that all this is not at all of any use. Then there are those elements, but that would be there. But I also found that there are a lot of people who are in the in-between category, who are like, willing to listen to you if you tell it to them in their language.
The fence sitters, I call them.
Exactly. And that group is very strong. And I actually managed to run a study class in IIT every week for till I was there for quite some years. For I think 3 4 years, I was able to do it. So every week, so I managed to get one hostel. There was one. I was not a hostelite, so I was a day scholar. But then there was one of the hostels I got him to give there this common room in hostels. So I got that assigned. So every week, one day I would go and sit there. I would take up some texts. So I've done a lot of texts with them, Bhaja Govindam and a few Vedantic texts. So and they would come and they would and I had a good steady group of people who actually did that. And some of them are still in touch with me, and some of them are still part of that study classes here. So the point is that it is not impossible, or it is not that people you cannot reach out to these people and they will not be responsive. There is a great deal of need in such places, especially because Vedant is highly, especially for Vedant, because it is a very intellectual and rational process. So therefore, you will find there is a great market, if I would use that word. It's not the right word, but I'm just saying there's a great demand for it if we are able to get it there. This is what I found with my interaction in IITs at least.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think most IITs, many IITs and such institutions often have this Gita study group and such groups. So I think there is a section among the youth who are interested, who are open-minded to uh, connect with the civilization, but they may not always have the means to do that, or they may not know how to do that. So I think these groups, the work that Chinmaya Mission and many other organizations and study groups are doing is very critical. Kind of it acts as a stepping stone for guiding many people to take up more serious engagement with the Shastras and engagement with our civilization and knowledge system. So moving forward, as a scientist, I want to ask you, being a scientist, there is a view in certain section um, of the society that science and dharma are incompatible. And in some sense, it is so also in the sense the way we understand science today, or the what I call as modern Western science, I would say, because it is defined in a certain way that it defines reality as only being that which is empirically verifiable, empirically falsifiable. So this, by definition, is kind of somehow contradictory to how dharma understands reality, because dharma and Vedanta, dharma and moksha, the two subjects of Veda, is by definition atindriya, beyond empirical, not reachable by empirical means. So this being the case, so as a scientist who is also a sadhaka, very much rooted in dharma and Vedanta, how do you see this uh, two diverse branches or two apparently contradictory pursuits? So tell us your views on this.
So thank you for that question. Actually, it's a very interesting one. And first of all, I think that there is a what people often try to do is we use any one as the as a yardstick to compare the other. I feel that that is not the case. For example, if you want people, there are a lot of people who say that science and all is not reliable, and whatever is should only, or focus should be only on whatever dharma is. So one cannot rely on science, or there's a kind of a negative outlook with any modern technology or any modern developments. And there's one category of people who are no, these all modern technologies are bad. That is not a right outlook to have, and therefore that's a small section of people, and that section is actually very small even in Sanatana Dharma itself. But it's very, very more common in certain other belief systems. But the other group is a very big group which says that science should be all end all, and everything should be evaluated from the scientific perspective alone. I think that both these are myopic in my opinion. So science has its field of application where it is supreme and where it has got great advantages, and one must use it at that point for that purposes. But that does not mean you can apply it everywhere. So I think that distinction one needs to have. Okay, what is the role of science in your life? What is the role of philosophy, or what is the role of theology? One wants to go broader. I think that the intermixing of the two is what I believe is problematic. For example, science cannot go beyond the gross because its system is based on gross.
Yes. Yes.
So because everything has to be measurable, everything has to be quantifiable. So it cannot, as if I want to use the terminology, everything has to be a pratyaksha praman. It has to be there for it to be able to come out. And of course, anuman praman is also valid in science. So one can do a anuman, but anuman is also based on pratyaksha.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
so therefore, these are the only two domains where science can function. So to try and make science function in anything else is not going to be possible, because that is how science has, that's the field it has carved for itself. At the same time, one cannot discount experience. And experience is not just of one person. The people, what I have one line of thinking is anything which doesn't fit the purview of science, but yet has been experienced, is put down to simply bias, or simply put down to something like that is a like one person's things. But it's not one person's thing. Here we have a whole civilization of experiences, and you have people who have given, and there are a lot of, and there is a logic there also, but the foundation of that logic is not science. So that is the problem. So you cannot use scientific logic everywhere. Logic is valid even in Vedanta, even in Dharma Shastras, but
Yes.
that is not scientific logic. So that distinction people need to preserve, and there is no conflict there, because you can very well pursue this where is required. Like if I have to, I don't know, if I have to find out the boiling point of water, I will go and use a thermometer and do it. I will not going to worry about it or in that sense. But where I have to do I have to invoke Agni Devata, I'm not going to look at scientific principles of combustion. I know that Agni Devata invocation, the physical manifestation is not Agni Devata alone. There is a mantra aspect to it. So that is a different domain. I think the two domains can very well coexist without infringing on the other. Having said this, I also don't like this trend of trying to use science to somehow glorify dharma.
Yeah,
Where
I think that is the most uh, uh, most inappropriate thing. Not just glorify. I think what they do is they try to use science to justify the tenets of Hindu Dharma, and that is a very very problematic approach because tomorrow science will change, say something else. Then what happens to our Shastra Pramana if we define it, if we justify it on the basis of science, then the Shastra Pramana lose all relevance, right?
true. Because while it is true that there have been many scientific discoveries done by our Indian rishis as well, that is true on one perspective. But the greatness of a rishi is not because he did scientific investigation. That is just to, there's like Agastya Samhita, they say talks about the battery. That's there in Agastya Samhita. But the glory of Agastya Rishi is not that he spoke about the battery. So that is where the problem is. But I do understand it to some extent, because to the modern man today, because of the problem of the way education is happened today, that perhaps quoting some of those things is necessary for them to at least take a peek into the other side. But that cannot be like the only means of establishing the importance of the other side.
Yes, very rightly put. I think I think part of the reason is also because of the education system. We have been brought up to think in a certain way that what is empirically verifiable or what is verifiable in a laboratory mechanism or in a couched in a scientific language alone is real. The rest are myths. The fact is, most of what is called as theoretical physics, theoretical science, and all, they are also speculation, much as they uh, claim to otherwise. But at least we have a Shastra Pramana. I think that the whole problem is that people are unaware that there is something called as Shastra Pramana. There are different pramanas, and each is a valid source of knowledge. So that is missing. So this brings me to my next question. About how there is a widespread deracination and derooting of younger generation of Hindus from their dharmic roots. So what we discuss in context of science is just one of the manifestation of that deracination, that we are not aware of our own identity, our own unique knowledge systems, our own categories of thinking, our own criterions of determining truth or determining the proving falsity. So this is just one aspect of this manifestation of deracination and deroot. And you have been working among many such youth and have guided them. We discussed briefly about the fence hitters. So, what do you see are some of the important reasons behind such a deracination, and what corrective measures can be taken, especially uh, what I have in mind, I want you to highlight upon, especially how Vedanta can help in addressing.
So again, very important point that you have, yes, Nitinji, that so I think I will start by saying that when I look back at myself, despite having a very good religious background and a good family, I was deracinated for a long time. If I have to look back at my own self. So I think the answer to that is, I think there are multiple factors to it. Very important one being the education system itself. So there is like how much ever one can do or teach or whatever, because one is that as Indians, we pay a lot of importance to education. At least, it's like a very important thing in life. Studies are very important. So when that much importance is placed on something, we believe that whatever is there in that is great knowledge or is very much value. So and as the education system, I don't only mean the books. That is that's a very important source. I also mean the teachers. I mean the whole ecosystem. Well, because I'm not blaming them because they are all a result of the same things. Like they are the products of the same thing, so they're producing the same thing. So it's like the same thing is continuing year on end. I think that is one big reason why you grew up with certain ideas. Like right now, I feel little bad about saying this, but there was a point when I used to think that what is all this fight happening in Ayodhya, unnecessarily bloodshed. I know they should just let it go, and there should just be friendship, and we should just make some. They should make some hospitals there. And those are the thoughts that.
I think all of us in that generation, previous 2-3 decades, we have been bred and we have been educated in certain way that we all had that thoughts. Even I had when I was in high school thoughts. Why not have a school or a hospital? That would be more useful than all this nonsensical debate. That was even what I thought.
So therefore, I don't at all get offended when I see that kind of arguments come from youngsters, but I know that I have been the same way. So and I was not, and at that point, that seemed like the most correct point to take. So I think therefore there's a lot of emphasis there. But more than that, next big influence comes from the soft power, as I say, which is like the movies, the media, some of those aspects. So all of them also drive home certain kind of thoughts only. I think those again contribute to the deracination. So again, certain things are glorified, certain things are made fun of, certain ideas are always, expressed like this is the how it should be. And anybody who's not, accepting that idea is either a fool or arrogant or very backward. So just those sort of the soft power that media has, along with the education system, and that creates a kind of a cocoon around each of the youngsters. And it's only recently that I think ever since social media has come into the game and people like you and many other such people have come onto the field and now there's a lot of awareness which is building up. I think that is I'm very happy. When I was in, I had access to none of these. So I'm so happy that some of these are available today. So I think so therefore there is a great deal of information coming up. I'm just surprised that we are still at least in this position. If I look back and feel how like the kind of things I thought we would have been even entirely gone. But so many people have been working in these circumstances silently without being any recognition, but they have been keeping it going and our family values more than anything. That has been the only reason we are still at least surviving as a Sanatan Dharma today because of the family values. So I think that those are like generic points which I wanted to make. Now coming to the question of what Vedanta can do, I think Vedanta has a very big role in this because of one reason that, as I said, there's a lot of, at least people think they're intellectual. Some of them are, some of them may not be, but at least there is a great, what do you say? It's a great kind of image of an intellectual is something of someone to be respected, and somebody who can give arguments or who can convince and seem logical and rational. There's a lot of importance given to those sort of systems versus a system which is more based on, say, acceptance and following and practice and so those sort of things. So therefore because this kind of society is kind of looking at this this kind of thoughts with respect, the Vedanta can jump in here and do a great job, provided it also sticks to its shastras. What it should not have, what sometimes I see, unfortunately, Vedanta itself being twisted or rather very selectively brought out to just to convince people. I think that is again not the right approach in the long run. So while Vedanta can so if Vedanta remains, in its as integral, this integral form, then it can connect people and can give them the answers to various other things and can link them back to other places. And some of them may come only because, like myself, as I said, only came because of Vedanta. But then now I know the importance of bhakti, I know the importance of karma kand. I now appreciate all those things. So in that way, I think it can really do that. So, but these sort of the forum should be there for the people to get this knowledge in a simple form. There are many things which are coming up. I think a little bit more is required. And somewhere in the education system, we can insert Vedanta explicitly. I'm not saying only the ideas of Vedanta, which are like embedded into it, which I think some things are, but explicitly give them the terms, give them the points, so that these are the, as you rightly said, Pramana, these are so many beautiful ways of understanding. So if those things are actually introduced to people at the right, when they are especially at that age, I think it will go a long way in connecting people back to their roots.
I think you made a very beautiful point here that when people are exposed to Vedanta in the sense of a ecosystem or a framework, and through that people then become exposed to bhakti, karma kand, and everything. I think that is the most proper way to do it, most useful way to do it, because Vedanta, having Vedanta as an anchor, helps to align your life to the ultimate goal, and then to find out where you actually stand in this long spiritual journey that goes on for many lives, and then take the appropriate path to attain the purification of the mind. Because the Vedanta comes later, it is the goal in some sense, but first you have to attain the Chitta Shuddhi, right? But I often find that this is not always the case, that Vedanta is not, this is not how Vedanta is presented. Often I find that presentation of Vedanta sometimes is problematic, because it kind of, it is kind of removed from its dharmic basis. I think the moksha and dharma are like a twin birds. They go together. So when you present moksha by removing it from the dharmic foundation, then that becomes problematic. I think much of the new age spiritual movements are problematic because they say that you don't have to do anything. You're already free. Though that is a reality, we don't realize it, but they say that just saying so is enough. You don't need to put in the work to attain Chitta Shuddhi. And this also leads to kind of sidelining of dharma, sidelining of smritis, sidelining dharma shastras and all. Anyways, that's an interesting thing you made. So I have one final question to you, and this is again another that has to do with another misconception of what I believe. That one of the popular negative views about spiritual pursuit is that it is perceived as a selfish pursuit. I mean, the argument is that we are surrounded by so many burning socio-political, cultural issues that is affecting us in the society. There is poverty, there is uh, political chaos, there is this, that, so many things are put forward. So, such being the everyday reality, uh, it is held that those who pursue spirituality, those who pursue attaining moksha or atmajnana, they are being selfish. I find this very problematic. Please share with us your views on this as a sadhaka, because I find that you are very most suitable to answer this, because on one hand you are a sadhaka who are pursuing spirituality, but also you are deeply concerned about issues affecting our society. You work with children, and you are very vocal on social media on many socio-cultural issues as well. So, what are your views on this?
Very, very nice question that you have asked, Nitinji. And yeah, you're right. There's a lot of confusion about this. I would say on both sides. So let me maybe start with your side, with the point that you have raised. is pursuing Atmajnan selfish. Actually, the thing is that it's a very, very, one doesn't really have full understanding then what is Atmajnan in that case. So one needs to know that there is a sadhana aspect to it, and there is what we are trying to achieve. If you are trying to if you want to achieve Atmajnan, so what is the way suggested? Unless you have attained a lot of chitta shuddhi through either your previous janma, you are born with that kind of a mindset, or you are a person who has got great, some kind of, very early prodigy. Most people require a lot of karma yoga before they can come to karma sannyasa. Bhagavad Gita itself very clearly says this. Krishna tells Arjuna very clearly, if that you cannot come to karma sannyasa unless you have done karma yoga. Because unless you attain that kind of if you're a very selfish person, you can never succeed in spiritual. That's the first thing. So they are opposed to each other. So one is that if you are some people are ignoring social cultural issues simply because they find it too hard work there, or it's too much of work there. But this is more simple. They feel that way. This is easier, or this is here. I don't have to get into all that. I just do something and I temporarily find some peace of mind, and that is okay for me. That's all I'm concerned with. Then that is also a limited view, because you will not, this limited peace of mind is not what it is meant for. And your chitta shuddhi, unless it happens, that peace of mind won't really last. So therefore, you must involve yourself in some seva. So what field of seva you choose, that is yours. There is no need that everyone has to choose this field only or that field only. One can practice any field and one can purify themselves and reach this stage. So that is one side. On the other side, if you are somebody who genuinely feels a lot of vairagya, who feels that from everything, not just from these things, genuinely feels that my life purpose is very clear. I want to attain the moksha. That is my sole aim in life, and therefore I will lead a life towards that. Then that is perfectly valid. Nobody can force a person to go and serve the society. That is also not, that is a very wrong approach, because the object of karma yoga is to attain chitta shuddhi. You already attain chitta shuddhi, there is no need for you to do karma yoga, so to speak. But one can still do. But there are people who do karma yoga after Jivan Mukti also. If you want doing that is there, that's the wish of God. And there are some people who don't do that. They who just will sit in one place all their life. And I find that people comparing also. This type of yogi is good because he served the society. This type of yogi is not good because he just was sitting in the Himalayas or was not interacting with society. I think that's a very foolish thing to do. Every yogi who's genuinely reached that stage is worth much more, because therefore one is free to choose the path provided one is sincere in it. And that is the most important. One should be true to himself or herself in that path. If you know that you have not attained that kind of chitta shuddhi, then you must serve. You cannot avoid service. And if you're simply thinking it's too much of work and therefore you're avoiding it, or you're afraid because of fear. Oh, and if I get into these things, I don't know what society will say. Therefore, I don't want to get into this. But spirituality, society will not say anything. So I will, they say, I'm spiritual but not religious, that kind of things. So those sort of things, just because you want to maintain certain status quo, then you will not make progress anyway, because that means you still have loka vasana, which is very, very strong. So I think one is that, so to cut my answer short, one is that if you really have attained vairagya in everything, go ahead. There's no need for you to do seva also. You can go and pursue moksha alone. If that mumukshutvam is there, that strong desire is there for moksha, one can practice it and one can be focused upon it without needing to bother about any other outcome. On the other hand, if you are not such a person, if you are still beginning, one must find a cause and serve. And today, dharma needs. So instead of searching for causes, there is one cause which is right there in front of you. So all you have to do is if you can. So therefore, if you want to serve, there is a great place where service is required. So therefore, you can serve here. That's all I would say. And the other thing also I want to say, there are some people who only want to protect dharma, protect culture without understanding what is dharma and culture. That's another problematic issue, because then you are defending something, but you don't know what you're defending. And then you have a vague notion of what you're defending, but you are passionately defending it. Well, that is good, but it won't again yield great results, because there will be intellectuals on the other side who will break you easily. And you will say that, and they'll find holes in your argument very easy, and you will not be able to, and then you at some point will not be sure what you are actually doing. I think it is important also that for me personally, whatever sadhana I do, I feel like that is my fuel, which helps me take a proper stand and serve. Again, whatever service I do or whatever I am able to do for my dharma, that is the fuel which gives me the mental quietude to do my sadhana. So like both these fuel each other is what I feel. Therefore, for me, one is not completely the at this stage of mine.
Thank you, Arvind. That's very wonderful, very detailed perspective. I think you make a very important point that how only having a partial sightedness of the issue is problematic. I see that in the larger civilizational context, there are certain section of Indian society who are mainly political in nature, and certain section who are merely cultural in nature, and certain core who are purely spiritual, purely sadhana based. So there are very few people who are invested in all the three segments. So the more this changes, the more people become involved in all the segments, the more it will be good for us. That is how I feel. And having a Vedanta as an anchor is very important because, uh, as you said, what are we defending? We say that we are defending dharma, we say that we are fighting for dharma, but we do not know what is dharma or what is the basis of dharma. So many other times in our enthusiasm to defend dharma, we discard our shastras, which is the source of knowledge about dharma. So, so these things should not happen. For that, we need to have a anchoring in Vedanta, in the Veda, in the Dharma and Moksha both. It was a wonderful conversations, and I think we could go on for another hour also if needed. So hope to have more of this in future. And again, on the behalf of entire Indica Moksha and all of our audience, I thank you very much for taking time and on.
Thank you so much, Nitinji. And as I said, I really also enjoyed the conversation. I didn't see the time at all. So it was just flying for me. And they're very nice questions. And it's like any of us, I'm sure, we all have thoughts about these things. But whenever we find an opportunity to share them also, it brings us great joy. So I felt that joy today. So, and I really love to thank you and Nidika for giving this opportunity for me to share this. And I would love to talk anytime in the future as well on this or any other platform as you feel.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you again. Yes, with this, we come to the conclusion of yet another session of Quest, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram for more updates on upcoming sessions. Shri Guru Pranam.